Good morning, people. It's the 3rd of June. It's a lovely morning. I had a good night's rest. And I want to start with this whakatoki, Fōwhai te kete mātou ranga. It means fill your basket of knowledge. It's your responsibility. Another really pleasant idea that I want to share with you today, that I want you to critically reflect upon, is reflect upon your present blessings, of which every man has many, not on your past missed fortunes, of which all men have some. Simon Sinek is saying in his video that went viral, you should always start with why. So I want to start by answering this question, why reflection? Oprah Winfrey is not one of my fans and I'm not one of hers for no specific reason, but she said something that I agree with. You cannot have a meaningful life without having self-reflection. So according to her, self-reflection is important. George Couros, I don't have to tell you who he is, we all know. He's saying the ability to reflect is crucial for understanding and processing. It is also essential to our ability to move forward and create something from what we have learned. John Dewey, I love this guy because he's famous for this whakatoki. We do not learn from experience. We learn from reflecting on that experience. So I've already kind of like given you a proper introduction, but my objective for today is I'm first going to talk about why reflection, and I'm already busy with that since I've told you how important it is according to Simon. And so Simon said, and that's why I'm doing it. Why reflection? We're busy with that. And then reflection in action. We're going to see how you do it and reflection on action. The difference between the two. And I want to ask you now, is it 3 phases or 2? Reflection in action, reflection on action. I want you to please stop your video recording and first critically reflect on that. After you've done that, thank you that you've all done it. Now, I'm also going to talk about critical reflection is of global importance and definitely here at Te Pukenga. Critical reflection and you as a student, where and how to access the material on Moodle. We're going to look at that, and then we're going to look at the different components and content of your reflection. The reflection that, or the reflections, there's 4 of them that you're going to be responsible, and I'm going to show you exactly how we want it. And then I'm going to show you the models that you can use in your reflection. In other words, your reflections are supposed to be according to a specific model. And then I'm going to give you general tips. Just in order to ground today's teaching a little bit, I'm going to give you a little bit of history or background of different theories of how people are learning. The first guy that I want to focus on was John Watson. He said behavior is trained by reward or punishment. That's how it goes. In other words, if you do well, the stick and carrot principle. Edward Lee Thorndike then basically said behavioral patterns will be formed if actions are closely followed by satisfying results. And he tested it on cats and dogs, giving them rewards. The moment that they do something that he wants them to do, he will reward them. And eventually they will behave accordingly. And then there was this guy, you all know him, Pavlov, Ivan Pavlov, and he said behavior is learned through repetition. People, the problem is all these people did their experiments on animals, and then they basically projected it on human beings, and they thought human beings fall in the same category as animals. They totally missed it. Nevertheless, then there was this guy, Jean Piaget. Jean Piaget said the brain is like a black box and it's full of hidden content, and you must just know how to get that power, that knowledge inside the brain. You must just know how to get it out. And this is where creativity and what do you call it, innovation is coming from. So I really like this guy. If you look at all his theories and so on, unfortunately, I can't go in depth in it today, but it's really excellent, these theories. He was the first guy also using people and not animals. Just like when you construct a building, there must be a foundation, and then you start to build on existing knowledge. And this is basically how we learn, because that's another theory, the theory of constructivism. In other words, you can't build a layer of bricks in the air. It's impossible. And this is basically where our Bloom's taxonomy is coming from. So we first have to give you like a certain knowledge, and then you can start using that knowledge. And the moment that you start to apply it and later thinking critically about it, every time it's a higher level of knowledge. And this is why critical reflection is so important for us, because we want to lift you to a higher level of learning. Then there was this theory of neural pathways. It's not actually a theory, it's actually proven. But if you do something, say for example, it's the first time you're not able to drive a bicycle, stay on it, and then somebody will push you and do it all over and over and over again, and later on they will just leave you, and you will be able to drive for a small distance and then fall. And but eventually, because you're doing the same thing over and over, there will be a big path formed in your brains through all the neurons. So the first time that you are able to do it, there will be a connection between the neurons. But eventually, if you do it over and over, if it becomes a habit, there will be a big road. In other words, it will become like second nature. We all know, and it's general knowledge, that certain people learn through visual, through seeing, some audio, some reading, and some kinesthetic. We also know that EQ, in other words, that soft skills when you apply for a job, is more important than IQ. I've proven it to you in my classes several times with examples, and I don't want to repeat it today. But one of the models that is important about learning is that of Dr. Mason Dury, because he said, remember, we are not just brains and that's it. There's more to human beings. We are actually spirit, Maori, and we stay in a body. And if that body is hunger, if there's needs in the body, it will be difficult to learn to think. And the same kind of thing, we are supposed to learn as holistic beings, because we've got social needs. And yeah, we've got intellectual needs as well, but everything together must work in us as human beings, because you can be highly intellectual, but at the end of the day, you can commit suicide because you were not able to live this life successfully. And this is one of the reasons why we're going to look at critical reflection, because we do not want you to rely on your brains only. We want to show you there's more to you than just brains. I mean, you've got emotions, and one of the strongest things to use in your learning is emotional connections. Because, yeah, maybe I should give you an example of EQ versus IQ. You walk and you know snakes are dangerous, and you walk in the field, and the next moment, just to show you how quick EQ is, the next moment you see a snake and you jump away. And only when you're 2 meters away, it all happened like a reflection. Only when you're 2 meters away, you look at the snake and you see, it's a stick. Uh, Only then your IQ will kick in. And that's why the EQ is always quicker than the IQ. And they've proven that most people make decisions based on their emotions, and then they use their intelligence basically to just motivate why they've done it, just to convince themselves. So, yeah, people, the long and short of the story is we are interested in holistic learning, and that's why we're going to focus on critical reflection today. It's important to know that the human brain is totally different from a computer, because a computer, the more information you put into it, the eventually the hard drive will become full. But with human beings, it's exactly the opposite. The more knowledge you have, the more connection points there are for new information. So people who know a lot can know more. Those who have, for them will be given even more. And that's got to do with knowledge. Study for the exam. Let's say, for example, you study for the exam and there's this constant pressure, and eventually you feel as if your head is just like spinning. You know, I can't focus anymore. I can't take in any more information. This whole exam was just too long. There's too much pressure on me. The rat race is on me, people. Then you must know your whole body, your whole being is calling for quiet time. It's calling for reflection. Because remember, if all these things are there in your brain, it's like short-term memory. And eventually, your brain cannot cope with everything. So a lot of that information will just be lost. But the moment that you go and sit and become quiet or lie down, and you start to critically reflect on all these things going on in your head, and you link it to past experiences, past knowledge, and so on, that's when you really learn. And that's when it will become part of your long-term memory. It's interesting. You and I never forget. We never forget. What I mean with that is that irrespective of what happened to you, even as a small baby, it's there, it's in your brain. The only function that you lose is the recall ability. In other words, they can hypnotize you and they can take you back even to the days before your birth under hypnosis. And but like I say, the only problem is you've got all this information, how to recall it. And if you do critical reflection, you will recall your recall ability. Same, I can prove it to you. People with Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, they basically lose the ability. They totally lose the ability to recall. They can have bright moments, lucidum intervallans, like we call it in law, and where, yeah, for that moment, they can again recall it. But so the information is not gone, it's there in their brains. It's just the recall ability that we have to guard. So, yeah, okay, I see in the slide I've said it 2 times, but as long as you know that that's a good time when you feel, life, there's too many things going on in my head, then you know it's quiet time. People, if I talk about quiet time, I mean time for meditation, time for reflection. And remember, there's different kinds of meditation. You get that kind of Eastern meditation where you try to empty your brain. People, that's a waste of time. I don't think any of us has got time for that, and there's no profit into it. But there is profit in really focusing on certain stuff, incidents that happened to you in the past. And we will soon come back to that. I've already told you that critical reflection will help you to recall with a recall of information. In other words, this whole process will help your brain to make this knowledge part of your long-term memory and not just your short-term memory where it will just float along for a certain time and then your brain will realize, I'm not going to need it again, it's unnecessary, and then it will just throw it out. So the Japanese samurai soldiers believe in Kaizen. And you can Google it if you don't believe me. But what they do, they critically reflect. They reflect on life. They reflect on discipline. And this principle is so important. This is basically where Toyota was coming from. But constant. Kaizen basically means constant and never ending improvement. At one stage in my life, I really did excellent with jiu-jitsu, and I can still remember people sometimes ask me, Jay, how do you do it? Because I was planning my fights. I did not just go blindly into a fight. I was literally critically reflecting on each fight afterwards, where I could have done it better, but I was also critically reflecting on the fights that was still waiting for me. And then, of course, now I'm giving away the whole thing, the 3 stages during the fight. You also have to reflect to make sure that you recall the things that you've learned. So for you and for me as students, it is our task to move from good to great, because this was the thing that drove those samurai soldiers. They never believed we've reached the ultimate, we've reached the peak. They always believed there's better for us. We can further improve ourselves. And I want you to make it like a lifestyle for yourself. It's important for us to be on the same page when we talk about reflection. What does the word reflection mean? In other words, I told you it's not making your brain blank. There's no purpose in it. Reflection is to ponder a serious thought or consider something seriously. So synonyms, it's thinking, not making your brain blank. It's consideration, it's contemplation, it's pondering, it's meditation, it's musing, rumination, rumination, in other words, like a cow chewing the same thing over and over so that you can get as much as possible out of that piece of food, that piece of learning material. Brooding like a hen, staying on that topic. Don't move away from it. They tell this story about a wise man who once sent a guy to a tree. He said, go walk over to that large tree over there. Come back, take this notebook. And because the student told him, I want to be like you. You know so much in life. So he said, okay, I'll teach you. Take your pen and paper, go to that large tree over there, come back, tell me what you've seen. So the student came back. He said, okay, I've seen there's like a rusted car there under that tree. So the tutor asked him, okay, what kind of car it is? What kind of car is it? He said, I did not have a look. So the tutor said, okay, yeah, I see, I can see that. Go back. So then he said, okay, it's an old Ford. And so the tutor said, and how many wheels are still on it? And he said, I think there's 4. Does it have a spare wheel? Is the spare wheel still there? He said, I'm not sure. So the tutor sent him back. He came back with more knowledge and more knowledge every time. And this is basically what reflective or reflection is. Go there, ponder, look at the thing, look and look again and look again until you've really seen. Okay, people, we now know what reflection means, and it's a definite constructive brain focusing process, a definite thinking process. So, what does critical mean? Critical means expressing or involving an analysis of the merits and faults of a work. Okay. So just think in terms, if we talk about merits and faults, I've done a cost-benefit analysis with you in economics. So it's the same kind of scale that we also use in law, the benefits, the costs, the merits, and the faults. Okay, so synonyms for critical, in other words, you're supposed to be critical in your reflection, is evaluative, to be analytic, interpretative. Okay? So this is what Bloom is talking about, the Bloom's taxonomy, in other words, a higher level, critical. You must basically give your own opinion, criticize if you are able to what other people said, differ from them, or agree with them, and tell us why. You might say, I never did any reflection in my life, so I do not know how critical reflection works. People, critical reflection is actually the most natural thing that there is. A small baby, even before he walks, he sees himself as walking. And then he's like exercising the whole time. He's falling numerous times, but every time he gets up again and try again and reflecting, and eventually he will succeed, and then he will go to a new level. Later on, he will start to run. And at a certain stage, you as parent will wish, it was so much nicer when he could only sit. It was so much easier. But nevertheless, we know it's a very important process. But the main thing is we all reflect upon our lives. I can still remember at one stage we lost everything financially, but in that process I became depressed because I could literally see the sheriff coming in my mind to collect our stuff. And it drove me crazy because I was making my own movies. And I was looking back at all the mistakes that I made, and I was so hard and so critical on myself. And yeah, unfortunately, I've helped many people. One of my best friends was welding a diesel tank when the thing exploded, and I've seen so many people on their deathbeds wishing that they've lived a different kind of life. Suddenly, all that dimensions that Dr. Mason Dury is talking about that they've ignored in their whole lives. Suddenly, this is the most important thing for them. And they will tell you, I'm not ready to die. Suddenly, they realize it's not about working more, longer hours. It's not about making more money. And then they will really start to critically reflect about the purpose, the real purpose of their lives. So we as uh, teaching institutions, say for example Tupkenga, just like the universities, same thing, schools all over, we all know the extreme importance of critical reflection, and that's why it's part of the curriculum. because that's the only way that you can constantly learn and improve yourself. Learning is not really reading. Learning is reflecting on experience. Reading can prepare you for those experiences and to prevent some of those bad experiences. But I promise you, reading, listening is not really learning. Learning comes from critical reflections. And I can still remember we played a rugby match, and the pavilion, there were so many people. It was an important game. I was always playing either flanker or wing, and this day we were about 3 points behind, and in the last minute of the game, I just intercepted that ball and I ran straight through. Everybody in my whole town was standing on those pavilions. They were cheering me. I could see myself at that moment. Reflection in action. I saw myself as this hero scoring the winning try. And then I looked around. I saw the guy trying to chase me. I've outrun him. And when I bent down to score the try, I hit the ball out of my hands with my own knee. People, even when I'm telling it to you, it hurts. I've been lying awake about that mistake that I've made. I tell you, so many nights. I think altogether it would have been years, because in 1 second, I changed from the hero to the fool. So yeah, but I've learned. I've never again tried to score a try like that, being so nonchalant. One of the best Olympic races that ever took place, according to my own personal opinion, and before Usain Bolt, was the race between Ben Johnson and Carl Lewis. And remember, these two professional athletes, they hated each other. And they were both extremely good champions. And the whole world was looking forward to this race. And Carl Lewis knew one thing. He had to focus forward to the winning line, to the finishing line. But what he did, and you will see it on this photo, 3 times during that race, he was looking at Ben Johnson, not focusing on what he was supposed to do. And it cost him the race. That's how important reflection in action is. People, just yesterday I was talking to a person about Six Sigma, the GAP model, ISO 9000, and the lean model. Just yesterday. And basically, even if you look at flow charts, check sheets, scatter diagrams, histograms, Pareto diagrams, cause and effect, fishbone charts, control charts, brainstorming, the 5 whys, Kaizen, benchmarking, and so on. People, it's all tools that we use in exactly the same way. It's all about critical reflection. If you do your own brainstorming, people, it's critical reflection as an individual. But when you do brainstorming in a group, it's critical reflection in that bigger group. So they've discovered it's important not only for individuals to critically reflect, but also for teams. If you want to make the most out of teams, get them to critically reflect. If you go to Moodle, you will see the following. The University of Bradford, it's on Moodle, provides this definition of reflection. First, what reflection is not? Reflection is not about describing an event in simply narrative terms. No, it's about capturing thoughts. It's about capturing understanding. It's about critical insights. So I've highlighted those 3 words for you. Thoughts, understanding, and critical insights. Then you will see our Tupukenga weapon and or emblem. And in Afrikaans, it's a weapon. That's why I'm talking about the weapon. And but okay. So what about us as Kaiaku at Northtec, Tupukenga? Even for us, they expect us to critically reflect. So if they do our personal development, if they do our PDs, our evaluations, they look at the following cycle. First of all, you have to go to class and you have to go and teach. And then after the session, you have to self-assess yourself. And then you have to consider, is there not maybe new things that I can bring into my teaching? How can I further improve my teaching? Say, for example, what about the law of expectation of Dr. Bruce Wilkinson? Yeah, that's an excellent law. And you can start to practice it. And eventually, your teaching will improve. It will go to a higher level. And then, once it's at a higher level, you take it to the next level. And like I've said, like the samurai, there is never an end. Just go higher, just go better. Okay, people, Northtec, Tupukenga at this time and place, it's the same pudding, just a different sauce. But this is basically the photo that you will get, the screen, when you want to enter as a Konga, your industry projects. So I want you to go there to log in. Once you've logged in, you will see course outline and prescriptions. If you go in there, you will see there's the course outline and then the course prescription, and I want to take you there. Okay, unfortunately, the heading of this document is cut off, but it's industry project right at the top. The label of this paper is industry project of this document. And then the course code is AMIP 700, and it's effective from January 2021. And then the rest you can read. Your workplace experience needed, the hours to pass this course is like 200 hours. Self-directed learning hours, and that includes critical reflection, is 190 hours. And then if you look at the course aim, to enable students to apply their learning, test the relevance of academic theories to the workplace, and, listen, to reflect critically on this relationship between their academic study and industry practice. So it's not something that Petrus or Salvador or Graham or I just thumbsucked. Critical reflection is really important, and even it's coming from NZQA. So if you look at the learning outcomes, the first learning outcome, learning outcomes on successful completion of this course, the student will be able to, and then the first learning outcome, critically analyze and reflect upon the project experience in relation to relevant theories. In other words, it's not just something that's going to a critical analysis or reflection hanging in the air. It must be relevant, and it must be in relation to relevant theories or concepts, models, and current industry practice. So it must be related to that, and it must be relevant. Now I want to take you to a different document. If you go to resources, now assessment resources to applied or for applied research, you can look for a document labeled 5-Point Reflection 2022. That's an important document. And yeah, I know some of the students contacted me because it was only loaded
because there's three different things that you can do, either research or enterprise project, or the industry project, and it was only loaded on one of them. So last night I've made sure that it's loaded everywhere so that you can get access to it. But that document is kind of like important because it's all about your reflection and what you're supposed to do. Okay, once you've clicked on that area that I've shadowed on the previous slide, or highlighted assessment resources for applied research, it will open up like this, and it's the very last document on the list that you have to double click on and open. Now the document in front of you will look like this, and you will see industry project reflection written in big bold letters on this document. Okay, there you will see the instructions, and there's the instructions written for us, and I've taken brackets to show you I'm going to take only this portion from the one bracket to the other one, and we're going to focus on that now to see exactly what this document is asking us to do. You will see they're talking about business theories in that specific portion that I've just pointed out to you, but I'm soon going to basically cut and paste it on a slide to focus in on it. But business theories are proposed laws or principles that can be used to describe markets, competition, innovation, and organizational culture. So this is what business theories are, and there I've done it for you, APA reference style. Google this morning with a smiling face. Okay, people, so on that document that I've highlighted, you will read the following. Reflection is a critical skill for an effective business leader. And then it's also saying keep an online, it's making a suggestion, keep an online journal as a forum that describes events or issues. So the first thing you will see, they're talking about describing events or issues. Remember that, that's number one. And then they're talking about a critical analysis, or critically analyzes them based on your learning from this and other degree papers or your broader learning. So there's a description, and then there's a critical analysis, the two portions. To help ensure good marks, start early and demonstrate a habit of critical reflection. So in other words, the person who's supporting you in your industry project, he wants to see, you have to demonstrate to him a habit of critical reflection. And then the due dates are specified for each of the 4 reflections in NorthNet. People, according to me, you cannot project manage if you don't stick to those dates. Okay, yeah, there's always valid excuses, and it's interesting, the same students always have those valid excuses, and maybe I'm a little bit hard if I'm saying this, but I can't remember ever skipping a deadline in my life, to be honest, because I never leave the things till the last moment. So I make kind of like provision for the unforeseen, risk mitigation. And yeah, if you're a good project manager, you will be on time. So what I usually ask my students, I ask them, I say forget about the timelines specified on Moodle, and not really forget about them, but set me dates and try to make it even quicker. And I tell you, it's amazing how students can stick to those deadlines, because if they do not stick to them, they will definitely lose marks, because it's kind of like a symptom of a bad project manager. Not that I'm saying that they're not going to have a valid excuse. It can be like that. Maybe I'm sounding too hard, but yeah, I don't really like it when students are late. And because remember, if you're part of a project or other people rely on you if you are going to be late, you're probably going to postpone them as well. So I don't have a lot of tolerance for that. Sorry for being so honest and true about it. So I've been talking about the due dates, and you'll find the due dates on Moodle, and it will look like this. This is the actual program that you'll find on Moodle. And yeah, there's certain dates, deadlines specified, but it's your own project. So if I were you, if I were in your shoes, I will just make my own dates, my own target dates, make them earlier. Then there is room for the unforeseen. So I've proven to you the first learning outcome requires you to critically analyze and reflect upon the enterprise or the research or the industry project experience in relation to relevant theories, concepts, models, and current industry practice. People, in this case, I've highlighted theories with a yellow. What is a theory or an example of a theory? Because I've already given you a definition of a theory, but you can Google for more or read about it or ask your supervisor to tell you more about theories. But get the info from somewhere. But one example is, for example, theory X and Y. Theory X posts that employees are apathetic or dislike their work, and managers who adhere to Theory X are often authoritarian and will micromanage everything because they don't trust their employees. But Theory Y posits that employees are self-motivated, responsible, and want to take ownership of their work. Managers who adhere to Theory Y include their employees in the decision-making process and encourage creativity at all levels. Or you can focus on something like the human relations theory or the systems theory. Sorry, I only realize now that the camera is not on. The first learning outcome is to critically analyze and reflect upon the research project or the enterprise project experience in relation to relevant theories. We've already given you examples of theories, but also concepts. Concepts can be like the e-commerce concept, or the business-to-business concept, or the business-to-customer concept. Any kind of good, viable business idea is basically a concept. Like Steve Jobs, when he saw the desktop on your table and on each customer's table long before anybody else saw it. Or Jigar Shah from the Carbon War Room, who basically foresaw the idea of selling sun panels without people actually buying it. Okay, and the canvas model, that's an idea of a model. People, if you're busy with the enterprise project and you're not using the canvas model, I mean, it's totally illogic. It's the best model there is. You can't just ignore this kind of model. There's a lot of other models as well, and I've mentioned some of them to you. And you can use change models from Kotter or whatever you want to refer to, or quality control models like Six Sigma or the ISO 9000 that I've talked about, or the lean model. There's heaps of models that you can refer to. And you can also refer to current industry practice. In other words, it's not can, you're supposed to refer to this. Industry practice means exercising the degree of skill, care, diligence, efficiency, prudence, and foresight that could be expected from a skilled and competent organization. I've put in brackets the word person, because if you look at the Health and Safety Act, it's including legal persons, and experienced in managing projects. So all kinds of persons, legal persons are included here. So please make sure that you basically link your critical analysis to theories, concepts, models, and current industry practice in short. So what you have to do, you have to submit 4 reflections in 2 parts. Part 1 of each reflection will basically outline the event or issue, and this might include a brief description of your response to the event or issue. 4 marks, just short, just to introduce us to the issue or the problem or the event that you've faced. Part 2 presents a critical analysis. Your analysis will ideally link to relevant theories, concepts, models, and current industry practice. I've already explained that portion to you, and this will count 6 marks, so you will get 10 marks in total. If I have if the mark allocation was upon me, I wouldn't have made the basically the description portion more than 2 marks, but okay, it's like that, and I'm happy to accept it like that. And yeah, refer to the marking schedule as a guide whenever you're doing your reflection. Basically, I'm going to cover everything with you, but yeah, you can refer to that. Okay, people, this is examples of events or issues, an organization's culture, project management issues, technical difficulties, events or issues leading to new learning, opportunities presented by the project, reflections on the industry or sector, interpersonal challenges or rewards. This is all examples. The list can go on, but this is just ideas for issues or events. We're basically busy repeating the same thing that I've already said, but this is what you find on the system, so it's separate from my own examples. Your analysis will ideally link to current industry practice for critical reflection. And we want to see engagement and professional development. So examples of theories is, for example, organizational culture, motivation, ethics. Concepts, project management concepts, and the psychology of the workplace. And then models, for example, leadership models, etc. So just to make sure that there's no doubt, each of your 4 reflective forums has 2 parts. Part 1, the event or the issue that you will describe, and part 2, your critical analysis. You won't believe it. I've told it so many times to one of my students, and then at the end of the day, I received a single thing and I couldn't make out what is the description, what is like the critical analysis. So yeah, and it was interesting the moment that I failed this student, how quickly this person realized how to do it correct. Okay, people, this is the marking matrix that we will follow for each of your 4 submissions that you are going to make, your critical reflections. So part 1, there is the event or the issue, and you're going to get 4 marks for that. Okay. Because we all believe in Kaizen, we're not going to look at the 0 possibility that you can get, or the 1 mark, or the 2 marks, or the 3 marks. We're going to aim for the sky, because the sky is the limit. If we aim for the sky, at least we will hit the treetops at least. So 4 marks. You will get 4 marks in the if the event or issue reveals solid progress in your learning and a sound understanding of the organization and the project that you that you're busy with. Reflection skillfully communicates the personal impact of the event or issue. Okay, people, part 2, the important portion. The other portion is also important because it's 4 marks. It's 40%. Here's your critical analysis. You will get 6 marks for it. The portion that you have to focus on, how is it supposed to look like if I want to get full marks? And you can. The reflection is supposed to be insightful, highly appropriate, relevant. People, sometimes I get the most funny ideas. I've been studying for my industry projects, and then my pants started to scratch me, and then I discovered this ointment, and this ointment is really good for you, something like that. It's not really relevant. Yeah, I know it happened to you, and I know you felt bad about it, all those things that you put into that reflection, but it's not really relevant. It's not relevant with regards to your project. So you're not going to get marks for it, not from me. So a highly appropriate concept or model is briefly outlined. So we've already looked at it. You have to choose a certain model, correctly cited and referenced. And then there's like a link between the issue and the model, and you've used it skillfully. I think it's going to be worth the effort to go to this. Right at the top of the page, when you get into the industry project website or the Moodle site, click on this shadowed portion, Course Resources. The first page, when you open the industry projects, click on this, Course Resources. Okay, people, so once you've clicked on it, it will open over here and you will see a whole list of different documents. Go over here to exemplar reflection. One of the tutors felt that this was exemplary, so we've put it up there for you as an example. So it's just making logical sense to go and read it before you do your first reflection. I think by now all of you got this photo from me because I've sent it to so many individual students. If you're in the industry project site on Moodle, you will see course resources, and then this shadowed portion, I've shadowed it for you to make it easy for you to see where it is. The heading is reflective writing. So we're busy with reflective writing. So it's kind of like logic that you can't just fall away and do kind of like a reflective writing as if you can suddenly know how to do it without first reading and listening to the YouTube clips. So it's worth the while clicking on it and listening to it. But okay, of course, I'm going to do it for you on your behalf today, because I'm basically going to present the same material. Once you've opened this portion, you will read the following. Reflection is about thinking. Reflection is about thinking. It's about thinking deeply about something so that you are able to understand it more thoroughly. And it might include the following: reviewing or replaying an action or interaction to make sure nothing has been overlooked, like that wise man who sent the student back and back to that tree so that he later on could see the stones under the tree and the sand and the plant growth and the ants and the different kinds of insects, not only the car. Later on he could write a whole book about that scene under the tree, and he could even look far, over the horizon from there. Being brutally honest with yourself about your part in something, it might include that you go there, being brutally honest with yourself, and I want to encourage that. I want to encourage living from truth. I personally, that's one of my values in life. I like to pursue truth. And it might include evaluating material, all the material that you can get available about a certain experience that you went through, so that you can get that deeper insight, because you can help other people. Trying to find a clear way through something complicated, such as an ethical or professional problem. Ethical dilemma is like you get in a situation where you know it's not 100%, you don't actually feel like doing it, but there's like this, maybe if I just do it once, you know, and that's kind of like an ethical dilemma where you've got your code of conduct, but you think to yourself, it's not illegal, I can only lose my job, maybe I should take the chance. Okay, so it might include finding connections and relationships, often between something abstract, such as a theory taught in class, this is actually what we like and looking for, and something concrete, such as an incident that occurred when working in a practical environment. But people, important, don't repeat what's been taught in class. Let it be your own. Ultimately, it is about making sense of experience. Okay, people, over here, we want to look at the difference between simply describing or reflecting. And this example is taken from Cottrell, 2003, page 174. Look how beautifully I've quoted it. APA, man. No, not really. I've copied and pasted it from Moodle. So in the seminar break today, Mary was talking and I wanted to say something. She had been talking for a few minutes already and I hadn't said anything. I was interested in what she was saying, but then just interrupted. It was a simple mistake. I didn't mean to upset her. Mary carried on talking for a moment and then decided to stop. She looked angry. Everybody just looked at me as if I were in the wrong. I didn't even talk for very long. Peter said I had an interesting point. Then we went back to the seminar and Mary avoided looking at me all the way through. And then the comment on this is, this might seem reflective. It makes evaluative statements and it contains a good deal of feelings, expression. It is just descriptive, however. All it achieves is to document the incident which took place. So in other words, it's just a description with feelings in it. It's absolutely not reflective in nature. Okay, people, if you just describe something, of course, you're functioning on a lower level according to Bloom's taxonomy, a lower level of learning. So instead, Cottrell perceived this as a more reflective piece on the same incident. In other words, this is a better example that I'm going to read to you now. Today was useful, as I realized I am still interrupting people when they are talking. I cut right across Mary today during the seminar break. I realized this was not very skillful or considerate. Mary looked annoyed. I just ignored this at the time because I was embarrassed. It would have been better to have apologized as soon as I realized. I will next session. I have to take more care not to burst in when other people are talking. Maybe I could ask for Joe and Ali to point it out to me for a while so I notice it more. What appears then is that the second extract, in other words, this specific slide where we're focusing on now, does not storytell the events, rather it tries to express the personal insight. In other words, that's what we want to see in your reflection. Insight that you've gained from the experience. And a shift in behavior or a change in your attitude. And the strategies which might make that happen of the student involved. I can still remember in my own life, because I'm also following the principle of constant and never-ending improvement, and I'm also doing a lot of self-reflection. But one day, I can still remember that I was in an argument with somebody, and afterwards, I realized, hey, I'm going to lose this person. And I was thinking about the whole argument, and I've realized I've been right. And every time that inner voice told me, go, make right, I said, but I was right. Until eventually, that inner voice convinced me, no, your attitude was wrong. You were wrong. So I went to this person without saying why, and I just said, I'm sorry, and I meant it. Okay, reflective writing in assessed pieces. So these excerpts might mislead you into thinking that once you are expected to do a reflective piece, that this is all it is. Deep thinking about your intrapersonal and interpersonal experiences. In other words, what this guy is telling us, hey, at the degree level, it's not enough. At the degree level, it's important to show your thinking, your interpersonal experiences, but at the degree level, we want more. When it comes to academic reflective writing, you have to take note of the following. It does not address its reader using you. It does not use slang, contractions, for example, it's, or don't, or I'll, or note-taking abbreviations, for example, IE, or E.G, or etc. It does incorporate information from more passive learning, such as methods from textbooks, social theories or procedures, policies or legislation, what it has to offer. Okay, people, the blue portions are like really important to me. Academic reflective writing, it should be critical, reappraise and reassess what the writer thinks, believes, and does so in light of an evaluation of theory and research. It does reference its sources. It is not free writing. Now is the time to look up where something you have taken for granted all these years might be from. In other words, you have to reference whatever you say, okay? You have to refer it to those models and the theories and the concepts that we've been talking about and industry practice. You have to use careful structure, paragraphing, good grammar, spelling, punctuation. It still has good text basics such as a clear introduction and a conclusion. It does not generalize. It is specific as it can be about experience and its relationships. It makes deep observations and links these to current learning, theory and research. it does not gloss over small but significant implications. In other words, if there was, like I said, the wise man who sent the student back, there's more for you to see, there's more for you to see. I want you to see. I don't want to send you back and say, do it over, so that you can see better. Does use I judiciously. This is not to say it is simply free writing about your personal opinions and beliefs, but reflective writing. Reflective writing cannot work if there is no ownership of the feelings, experiences, and learning being explored. We want to see that ownership. So yes, you can use I, but it is not free writing. People use the models given or the frameworks to link theory to the event or the issue. And, can you see that red in the middle? That's standing for and. Critically analyze the reflection. Critically, analysis is the key part of any reflection. It tells the reader that you learned from the experience and what you might do differently the next time. Without a critical analysis, you have merely described an event. So remember, we want to see that critical analysis. This is a slide that I've copied from Moodle, Kolb's learning cycle. I've just given it a nice brown background. And it's saying there will be an initial experience. You have to give a quick description of it. And feelings and reactions should play a role. But then the evaluation, the analysis, the conclusions, and the specific general conclusions, and then specific conclusions, and then the personal action plans for the future will follow from that. So first of all, the description phase, and then again the critical reflection. People, you will basically see that in all industries, they're talking about reflection in action and reflection on action. But remember, that reflection has a history. You have to reflect on past action and on future action. So a current reflection is basically while you're running that reflection in action, or while you're doing the reflection. That's reflection and in action, and it's got a future. So it's a reflection on action again, just like on a past event, but this time you've not done it yet, but you're planning for the future. Reflection, it's like doing a project plan for a project that you're going to implement. Afterwards, you will have like an evaluation, which is like a reflection. How did it go? How can we improve? So that's the reflection beyond action. In other words, you want to go into the future, and this is what we want to see. The three phases on action in the past, reflection in action, and then reflection on the future as well. And then the whole cycle will repeat over and over again. Okay, so over here, I've taken this one from Google, but I've just changed it a bit. You will have like a practical experience. The question is what? It's a simple description of the event. Purposefully reflect on selected aspects of the experience. For example, your feelings and reactions. And so what? Do an analysis of the event. That's your evaluation. Discover what learning arises from the reflection. And now what? Proposed actions following the event and applying your learning and improved actions. Okay, people, you have to use like a model for your reflections, and I really suggest this is a real good one, the reflect model. R is standing for recall the event. Give a brief overview of the situation upon which you are reflecting. This should consist of the facts, a description of what happened. E, examine your responses. Discuss your thoughts and actions at the time of the incident upon which you are reflecting. And F, acknowledge your feelings. Highlight any feelings you experienced at the time of the situation upon which you are reflecting. Okay, so that's the description, and now you come to the important portion. The L stands for learn, the L of reflect. From the experience, you're going to learn from it. Highlight what you have learned from the situation. E, explore options. Discuss options for the future. In other words, if you're going to encounter a similar situation just like the one that you faced, how will you handle it? And then, number 6, C, create a plan of action. In other words, create a plan for the future. This can be for future theoretical learning or for action. Adapt to other real life situations. In other words, what I'm meaning with that, the principles that you've learned because of the thing that you experienced, if you can apply it to other areas of life, we will know that you've really learned, because that's the highest kind of learning according to Bloom's taxonomy, and that's what we want you to achieve. It's like law. Judges are supposed to be able to apply those legal principles in all areas of life. So we want to see if what you've learned in this situation, if you can apply it even in different scenarios. Okay, people. And then T of reflect is standing for time, setting a time scale. Set a time by which the plan outlined in stage 6 will be complete. An example of a plan can be, let's say, for example, you've been like in a situation where there was a lot of pressure for you to do a wrong thing. Maybe you're playing for a cricket team, and you can really watch the movie Hansie Cronje, but he was captain of a cricket team, and the sport industry is a multi-billion industry of people betting, doing sport betting, and they came to him and basically asked him to let his team, convince them to lose, because it would mean a lot of money for all of them. And so he fell for it. And you and I, if we've been under financial pressure, we can easily also fall for a scheme or for a scam like that. But to make sure that if a situation like that is popping up in your life again, in order not to fall in that slippery slope trap again, you can basically create for yourself an ethical framework that will help you in decision taking in such a situation. Whatever it is that you're going to plan for, we just want to know that, you mention what it was, and maybe shortly tell us. We just want to see that you can go past, you can apply the principles in future, and that you've learned. What we actually want to see as tutors is the whole evolution of your learning. That's the most important thing, to be honest. Okay, so this was a YouTube clip on Moodle, and the lady who presented it said this is a model that you can follow, DIEP, and basically it's the Afrikaans word for deep in English, to dive deep. In other words, if you want to make sure that your learning is really deep. So there's an Afrikaans word that you now know, DIEP. So first of all, D standing for describe what happened. I, interpret the event. Consider what the experience might mean. how it makes you feel and how it relates to other things you have learned and insights gained. So first one, just describe, and then immediately you go to your evaluation or your reflective critical reflection. And this is like the I for interpret the event, and then the E for evaluate, how useful the experience has been. P is standing for plan for the future. How does the experience impact your thinking and future behavior? And what the presenter suggested, she said you should use this reflective critical reflection in the future when writing about lectures, readings, and theories. Why? Because we want to make it part of our long-term memory. And what she's suggesting, try and keep a balance between yellow, blue, and magenta over here. In other words, between the interpretation, the evaluation, and the planning. For me, that's not really that important. I don't really like to go in so much nitty-gritty, like don't use IL or EG or whatever, or etc. For me personally, I don't mind if students do it, but okay, yeah, there's a lot of nitty-gritty that I have to fall in with because it's part of the requirements. So I want us to slowly but surely lose altitude so that we can come in for a landing eventually. So first brainstorm the experience, then add theories and learning for yourself. In other words, you brainstorm it on your own. And lastly, bring in your personal beliefs and try and make connections between the ideas in order to present a brief narrative in a cohesive way. Remember, what, when, who, and where is mere descriptive. The answers to that is mere descriptive. Keep it to a minimum just to put the reflection in context. And then with regards to the reflective thinking, that's what actually matters. That's what we want to stimulate. That's what it's all about for us as tutors. Unfortunately, we have to see that you're really implementing it in your life, and the writing is basically only to get you in a habit of doing it and proving it to us. However, I've got a journal next to my bed. I'm doing journaling. We need to see you learn. It's about evolving skills, attitudes, and insights. People, this is a most important sentence. What is the reflective learning all about? It's about evolving skills, attitudes, and insights. Okay, look back with hindsight, analyze, and link. Remember that. Link it to other learning events, theory, and research, but do not repeat what they've said. If you look at what you've learned and theory and research, do not repeat what they've said. No, your own personal perspective is what we're looking for. And then project what you have learned to the future. You can focus deeper by focusing on just a theme rather than the entire experience. In other words, if you think about your whole experience, you've not only interrupted her, you've also maybe blew your nose too hard or something, or you coughed without having your hand in front of your mouth, the example that this guy gave. But maybe there's more stuff, but you only want to focus on this one thing. I've interrupted her, and I should go correct it. And what will I do in future? So you should write about your thoughts during the event, after it, and since the learning experience. And your feelings, how it made you feel. Did you feel uneasy? Did you feel comfortable? Or did you feel confident? How did you feel? So you have to write about the why and the how. How did it relate to your personal beliefs? That's kind of like important, because we all have different beliefs. We all have different paradigms. In law, you can still remember, I've told you all the alternative dispute resolution methods and negotiation, mediation, whatever it is. There's always two parties come with different positions. They all think they are right. Okay? And sometimes it's necessary, like me, the example that I've given you, where I had to go and say to the people, sorry, I've been wrong. Was I really wrong? No, I was right, but my attitude was wrong, so that made me 100% wrong. And if you can start to move to that level, people, that's real growth. Growth as a human being, as a holistic, because we want to focus on holistic teaching as a whole human being. Like Dr. Jason Dury is saying it. Unfortunately, we've been concentrating on only the academic part for too long. And we've neglected other more important parts. Like I've taught you, when people do reflections on their deathbeds, then suddenly they can't reflect forward. They can't look forward, because what next? And that's when they become real crazy and realize, panic-stricken, I'm not ready. I'm not ready to move into the spiritual world. So what? That's another question. So important questions: why, how, so what? And the implications to be reflective should link to this. Okay, people, there's a little bit of time for reflecting on what I've said. I want to make you think, because there's a saying you don't know what you don't know. So after all, people, I'm doing self-reflection, but I tell you, I really appreciate feedback from peers and even from students. I can remember, Rachel, if you can still remember, in class one day, you took me on, you said, Jay, I didn't like that thing and that thing that you mentioned. And you know what? And I've said sorry to the whole class, and I meant it. And I've learned from that, and I grew from that, and I'm a better person because of your feedback. And that's why I don't mind criticism in my life. I don't mind how it comes to me, because it's always an opportunity for me to grow, because I believe in Kaizen, constant and never-ending improvement, like the samurais. Thank you for listening. I will definitely have a critical reflection on what I've said today. And there's probably, like always, heaps of things that I wasn't supposed to say, but I've said it in the heat of the moment. So please forgive me if I've offended any one of you. And if I did, please send me an email and I will correct it. But there's one thing that I want you to think about. This thing that I started with. Reflect upon your present blessings, of which every man or woman, that man, that term is including everybody. We all have many of it, especially here in New Zealand, to be honest. Don't reflect on your past misfortunes, of which all men have some. People, I made so many mistakes in the past. So many, you won't believe me. It can make me depressed if I start focusing on that. But luckily, one day, a black man was confronting me in front of a huge group of people, and they were all black. And I've been white, standing there. And the reason why I went there in the first place was for reconciliation, because of the apartheid regime. And he was telling me what we did wrong to them and so on. And eventually I told him, I know. And I stood on my knees in front of him. I said, I know what we've done was wrong. What those people did, and yeah, I belong to that group, it was wrong. Will you forgive me. Because I told him, you know what? It's wonderful how the Creator made us. Our hands work forward. Our feet, it's facing forward. Our noses, it's facing forward. Our eyes, it's facing forward. Our ears, it's facing forward. Our mouths. I think the Creator made us to be forward people, to focus on the future, not on our past mistakes. Because there's one organ, there is one organ focusing at the back. And I promise you, if you're going to look at all that, I almost said, shit, it's not worth it, because you will become depressed. People, there's a big future for you and for all of us. Thanks for listening. I really, really, really appreciate your time and your commitment to listen up till this very end. Be blessed.